There are royal stories that eventually disappear from the headlines, and then there are stories that seem to become even more explosive whenever another detail is brought back into the spotlight. This is one of those stories. According to the source material, Angela Levin did more than simply criticize Meghan Markle. She repeatedly challenged the stories, contradictions, and narratives surrounding Meghan Markle, arguing that certain details did not always appear to match the version being presented publicly. And that is what makes this countdown so controversial. One contradiction can be explained away. Two can be dismissed as misunderstandings. But when similar questions continue appearing, the discussion changes. The issue becomes credibility. And how long a public narrative can survive when its details repeatedly come under scrutiny. The source presents 10 moments in which Angela Levin challenged Meghan Markle's version of events, covering privacy, responsibility, royal titles, Harry's decisions, Hollywood ambitions, and finally the Archbishop controversy. And the further this countdown goes, the more uncomfortable the questions become. Angela Levin doesn't appear to soften her opinions. She says what she believes, and according to the source, she has repeatedly questioned whether Meghan Markle's public accounts accurately represented what happened. The significance isn't necessarily one individual accusation. It's the pattern described throughout the source material. So let's go through the 10 moments that Angela Levin challenged. Harry and Meghan repeatedly presented their departure from royal life as a decision intended to protect themselves from intense public attention. But then came Netflix, Spotify, publishers, podcasts, interviews, and commercial projects that placed deeply personal experiences before a worldwide audience. According to Angela Levin's criticism, that created an obvious contradiction. If privacy was the goal, why continue releasing increasingly personal details about private life? The source presents the issue in a remarkably simple way. The royal family was not simply left behind. Family history became content. Private conversations, emotional relationships, grievances, and personal experiences became material that could be distributed and monetized. And that raises a more complicated question. Was the goal really complete privacy, or was it control over privacy? Who decides what gets revealed? Who decides when it gets revealed? Who controls the narrative? And perhaps most importantly, who benefits when those private details become public? According to the source, that contradiction became one of Angela Levin's strongest criticisms. The next issue concerns responsibility. According to the source, whenever something went wrong, responsibility was frequently connected to someone or something else: the media, the institution, staff, racism, sexism, or the royal family. Angela Levin's criticism, as presented by the source, is straightforward. Where was Meghan's own responsibility? The source also discusses claims from people who reportedly worked around Meghan and described an atmosphere of tension and dysfunction. But this is where the controversy becomes particularly complicated. Vague accusations can be extremely difficult to examine. If nobody is clearly identified, if a specific incident isn't described, and if the details cannot be independently tested, the allegation can remain emotionally powerful while being difficult to resolve. According to Angela Levin's argument, that is precisely the problem. The question becomes larger than whether one specific accusation was true. Could a narrative remain powerful precisely because parts of it were difficult to verify or challenge? That question continues to follow the story. Then the focus turns toward King Charles. According to the source, King Charles was initially captivated by Meghan. He reportedly saw her as glamorous, warm, charismatic, and potentially the fresh energy Harry needed. But Angela Levin's argument, as presented in the source, is that something changed after Meghan received the royal platform, title, and prestige associated with the institution. The relationship allegedly changed. The warmth allegedly changed. And that creates a much bigger question. Did King Charles believe he was welcoming one person into the family, only to discover later that his perception of her had changed? According to the source, Angela Levin viewed this transformation as significant because it suggested that the problem was not simply a disagreement between family members. It was allegedly a change in how one side viewed the other. The seventh issue concerns sexism. Meghan's royal experience was often presented as a struggle against a system that allegedly marginalized or underestimated her because she was a woman. But Angela Levin's counterargument focuses on what Meghan was actually given. The source points to a royal wedding reportedly costing £132 million, along with enormous visibility, opportunities, institutional support, ceremony, and access to the royal platform. And that creates another difficult question. If Meghan was supposedly being pushed aside while simultaneously receiving extraordinary visibility and institutional backing, what exactly went wrong? Was the system genuinely shutting her down? Or did the relationship collapse for reasons that were far more complicated than the public narrative suggested? The source does not present this as a simple question with an easy answer. Instead, it presents it as another contradiction that Angela Levin believed deserved examination. And the countdown is only getting more serious. When Harry and Meghan announced their departure from royal life, the message was not supposed to be simple disappearance. According to the source, they presented a vision of continuing meaningful work independently and redefining what service could look like outside the traditional royal structure. They were expected to become global changemakers in their own way. But Angela Levin watched what followed. According to the source, that grand promise gradually appeared to be overshadowed by commercial deals and increasingly personal revelations. 2 years passed. Then came Netflix, Spotify, and a book containing deeply personal details about members of the royal family. That created an uncomfortable gap between what had initially been promised and what eventually emerged. The source argues that many of the causes previously presented as central to their mission continued without them. And that made the contrast between the original promise and the reality even harder for critics to ignore. But then the countdown reaches number 5, and this is where the story becomes far more personal. Angela Levin's interpretation, according to the source, is that Harry's transformation and his increasingly damaged relationships with members of his family could not simply be explained by ordinary marital loyalty. The question becomes enormous. What could make someone walk away from his family, his country, his grandmother, and the world he had been raised to serve? According to the source, Angela Levin believed Meghan had an extraordinary influence over Harry. The source describes the relationship as something more complicated than ordinary romantic loyalty. Harry clearly loved Meghan. But Angela Levin questioned whether love and influence could exist at the same time. Look at the consequences, the source suggests. Harry had maintained a close relationship with his grandmother, yet major decisions were eventually made that could permanently damage that relationship. Publicly, Harry appeared to make his own decisions. He gave the interviews. He made the accusations. He confronted his family through public statements. But Angela Levin believed Meghan played a strategic role behind the confrontation, while Harry remained the person directly facing the consequences. That interpretation remains highly controversial, but according to the source, it became central to Angela Levin's criticism. Now the story turns toward royal titles. During the Oprah Winfrey interview, Meghan discussed the pain surrounding Archie and the question of his royal title. It became one of the most emotionally powerful moments of the entire media campaign. But according to Angela Levin, another contradiction emerged when King Charles's coronation approached. The source says that titles, recognition, seating, and positions reportedly became important behind the scenes. And that creates a simple but explosive question. If royal titles genuinely meant nothing, why were they so important? If royal status was irrelevant, why negotiate over recognition? Angela Levin's argument, according to the source, was that public statements about the importance of titles appeared difficult to reconcile with the attention reportedly given to those same titles privately. The controversy therefore became about more than a title. It became a question of public messaging, private negotiations, and whether the two appeared consistent with each other. Number 3 moves into one of the most controversial descriptions in the source. The idea of two very different sides of Meghan. One public image was warm, articulate, compassionate, and empowering. But according to Angela Levin, another side appeared controlling and manipulative, with behavior she described in extremely strong terms. The source does not suggest that every moment of charm was necessarily fake. Instead, it presents Angela Levin's argument that charm could potentially become a means of establishing influence. Harry became the clearest example within the source. Someone once regarded as deeply loyal to his family increasingly found himself separated from his father, his brother, friends, and the country where he had been raised. That transformation became one of the central questions surrounding the relationship. Was Harry simply making independent choices? Or did Meghan's influence play a much greater role than the public understood?